Tim Fitzgerald has been a part of Kansas State sports for the better part of 30 plus years. His story, it's not really a unique one or a different one, but it's one that I'm not sure a lot of K-Staters know. And if you do, great. I just thought this was another opportunity that we could, number one, talk about Fitz. I love the guy. He's been an extreme mentor to me in this crazy sports media, sports podcast world. I just love talking to him. I enjoyed talking about him. The guy is a great human being. He's a fighter. And he is literally the epitome of what Kansas State sports is all about. So without further ado, welcome back to Big B Sports Talk, man. We got Tim Fitzgerald here. This is a good one for me. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Well, thank you again for joining us, Fitz. I appreciate it, man. Tell us a little bit as far as how you got into GoPowercat.com. Let's just start there.
Well, I was a traditional journalist. Um, Went to work in 1988 at the newspaper in St. Joe, Missouri, and I'm wondering why the hell am I in St. Joe, Missouri? And of course, you know where Coach Snyder's from, so that
Right.
that question was answered eventually. Um, in '89, I went to work for my hometown newspaper in Salina, Kansas. I worked up through the ranks there. We had a six-man staff um, on the sports side. It was a really strong group. Eventually, I became sports editor there, and that was just wonderful. It was a really fun phase. I loved newspapering. I really did. I was a columnist and a designer, which is an interesting mix of things. But I did a lot of design work and editing and that kind of thing on the back end, and
Right.
the old cut and paste days. It was kind of fun to
Absolutely.
be part of that before pagination came in, and I enjoyed that. But eventually, I decided, Brian, I wanted to kind of lock in on um, one thing, and I interviewed to be a sports columnist in Portland, Maine.
Okay.
That didn't quite work out. You know, it's one of those situations where um, if they hadn't had some internal stuff going on, I probably would have ended up in Portland, Maine, and you wonder where you'd be now. And
Sure.
then a few years later, in 1985, a buddy of mine had been offered a job by the Wichita Eagle to start up a Kansas State sports magazine. They had experimented that previous year with a KU one, and they thought it was successful. And they had added a Missouri one because they had someone on staff that was equipped to do that. Dennis Dodd, who's now works for CBS, is a Missouri grad, and they realized we better do a K State one. So they offered a buddy of mine, and he turned it down and said, "I got your guy." And I went and interviewed for that, and I love the idea of being able to just lock in on one thing
Sure.
and focus on it. After years of, I think one of my breaking moments was taking track agate on deadline and kids wrestling
Right.
results on deadline. I'm like, I got to get back to kind of journalism. So anyhow, I went to the Wichita Eagle in '95, started Purple Pride. A year and a half into that, they decided that they didn't want to do magazines and books anymore, so they sold that division to a small company. And I quickly realized if I was going to work for a small company, I was going to work for myself. So in
There you
'98,
go.
my wife and I started up what was Powercat Illustrated, Spear Street Publishing, still to this day. Out of our house, we moved. I don't advise anyone to do this. We moved from Salina to Manhattan and started a business at the same time. The first things we moved into our house were our bed and our desks for our office that was in our house. So we launched and had great success immediately with that. And you know, it, in the fall of that year, a buddy of mine called. Someone I had talked about starting up our own business, Bobby Burton out of Austin, Texas, and said, "Hey, I just joined on with a company called Rivals.com. We're doing school-specific websites." So I was one of the founding sites of Rivals.com in the fall of '98, and eventually we're a magazine with a website, and then became a website with a magazine. And 5, 6 years ago, I gave up the print. It was just dying and losing money, like all print seems to do nowadays. We
Right.
just became a website, and we've been a website ever since. And we constantly evolve with the marketplace. like this is a perfect example. This type of thing wasn't around not that long ago.
Sure.
Certainly pre-pandemic, not many people were doing this.
Right.
And I do a lot of video work now, less writing than I ever have, a lot of podcasting, a lot of talking. And but that plays into my strength running my mouth. So here we are. Been covering K-State now for, if you want to go back to college, for almost 40 years, and certainly covering Kansas State more specifically, coming up on 30 years. It's been a wild ride. It's awfully fun to do.
That is awesome. And that was going to be kind of my next question. And again, I know a lot of people know your story, but I think there's a lot of people out there that don't. Um, why K State? Now, obviously, you went there, so
Yeah.
tell me why you went to K State. Was there an option to go? Obviously, there's clearly options to go other places, but what got you to K State?
Well, when I started up my company, the intention was never to be just K-State. The intention was to, eventually branch out and do some other schools, hire on some, guys like me to do the work. Um, but I quickly realized that I didn't want that. I wanted to focus in on just K-State and continue to double down on that. And that's almost to a fault. Um, we really haven't made a lot of money in this industry because I always reinvest. Whenever I get a little money going, I hire someone to make my life easier. And so I've had some opportunities before I left Rivals.com in 2017. They'd offered me to be what they call a shadow publisher of some
Sure.
other sites, which is a publisher that operates in the background. They've been doing that with the K-State site since I left. But I didn't like any of the places they offered me. They talked to me about Iowa State, which is a great fan base, but that site will never thrive because they've got a great independent site. Minnesota, but I didn't know anything about Minnesota,
Right.
so I opted out of that, joined 24/7 Sports, which is part of CBS, and off we go. And I've maintained my clear focus on one school ever since, and it's been a blessing. And I feel like I'm so ADD that if I started up some other things, I might lose focus on what I'm supposed to be doing. And I have done that. I have kind of lost my focus a little bit through some of my health issues in the past. So I think we're on pretty good track, and I got a great group working with me, including yourself.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that. It's just kind of one of the things that I was going to kind of get into next is, you know, K State as a whole has kind of grown as sports have kind of thrived in Manhattan, Kansas. Kind of give us that and your take on it because you've been there for such a long time and doing such great work. Kind of give us the rundown as K State as a whole in sports has kind of moved forward in not only a local scene but also a national scene.
Yeah, it's impressive to watch. What's happened with Kansas State athletics. From the time I started this on, the fact that it was kind of a shoestring budget. Kansas State did everything half-ass. When they built something new like Bramage Coliseum, it wasn't as complete as you'd want it to be.
Right.
I still laugh about they expanded the football stadium by adding a deck, but they didn't add bathrooms. I mean,
Right.
that seems like a basic thing. It was kind of defining of Kansas State. And there were some really good years in there with Tim Weiser as the AD, and then John Curry came in, and he was horrible at managing people, but he was brilliant at managing money and understanding how to raise funds. And he pushed Kansas State into a new era of we're gonna build everything shining and new, but we're gonna do it right. We're not gonna
Right.
take a half measure here. We're gonna go all the way, and that's kind of been the standard now. And I think it helped elevate all of us to think of Kansas State as more of a complete institution. We're still the little guys, but
Hmm.
which is something I like about Kansas State. But
Yeah.
also, there's no need to do it like the little guys, and everything around Kansas State sports now is big time and how they handle themselves. It's really kind of fun to watch them build things now, like a volleyball arena
You're
that the
right.
new coach came in and said, this doesn't happen anywhere. Nobody does this. Nobody builds a complete freestanding arena for volleyball, because this isn't a metal building like a lot of schools might build. This
Right.
is a 3,000, I don't know what exactly capacity is, arena, and it's going to be impressive. So that's fun to be around, and to see how the entire program has decided, you know what, we're going to compete on a national level, and that never was that never was something that Kansas State did in the past.
Yeah.
It was always, let's just kind of get by. Let's get
Right.
by.
Well, and I think that is kind of a testament to everything. I think, me being there in 97 and 98, I saw how things were. And to me, coming in, I thought, hey, this is great. It's up and coming. I hadn't really heard a lot of Kansas State, from where I was from. I didn't really know. I knew Kansas and I knew Kansas State existed. But, the stuff that I had heard, especially from where I'm from, was all basketball.
Yeah,
So, and it was just eye opening to see it. When I came on my visit in Manhattan, it was just incredible. And to
yeah,
come back and to see it now fits. Oh my goodness. I mean, I don't get back often. I mean, it's a totally different city. I
it
mean,
is.
I don't recognize anything that's going on there. I mean, it's crazy. I just love
Yeah,
it.
and of course,
Um,
we got to credit Bill Snyder. I mean,
Absolutely.
he uh, he taught us that it doesn't matter if you're the little guy, you can still compete. And you just got to work harder, and that's literally what Kansas State does to this day. Took on that personality, and so much of this is everything in this town. Literally, is because John Weefald, former president, hired Bill Snyder. Everything we see is those two men.
It's just John Weefall. I remember my recruiting visit. He walked up to me, and first of all, he acted like he was my best friend. He
Yep.
knew everything about me. I mean, the first thing he told me, and I'm not kidding, I'm not just saying this. I promise you, the very first thing he said was, "Hey, Brian, I know you're going to come to Kansas State. Do you think you can play basketball for us too? I know that you played basketball before." And I'm just thinking, man, this guy. I mean, I gotta come here. I mean, he
Yep.
had that kind of energy, and it never stopped the entire time I was here. After I left, 10 years later, I came back. He walked up to me and said the exact same thing. So, it just like he knew me. He just talked to me like he knew me. The man was an
Yep.
incredible man.
Yep. That's
But
how you
speaking
run
of
the whole
incredible,
university.
absolutely, absolutely. Now let's talk a little bit more about you, Fitz. I know that you've kind of gone through some battles, and I know you're pretty open as
Mhm.
far as your health battles are concerned. Um, to, I, I'm reluctantly asked these kinds of questions because I feel like I'm trying to pry in, but I know you're pretty open about it. Tell us what's going on with you now and what just where you stand as of now, man.
Well, my first health battle was I had a rare form of Graves' disease, and I almost went blind about 10 years ago. Um, thank goodness for great doctors. Literally, there was no documented treatment for my version of in a middle-aged man, so they designed something for me. So that was a traumatic experience, and I've still got eye damage from that. But you know, I was covering the NCAA tournament in 2018. And I'm in Atlanta. My wife and I had decided we needed to update life insurance.
Right.
My father was a former football coach, high school teacher, football coach, that got into the insurance business because my maternal grandfather was a vice president of State Farm. So life insurance and insurance in general has been kind of embedded into my family's DNA for a long time. And Becky and I decided we better update my life insurance. And as part of that, they sent out a lab to our house to do simple lab work and take my blood pressure and all that. The first company we went through uh, denied us because obesity, which I expected. Um, it turns out being fat and trying to get life insurance isn't easy to do.
No.
So we tried Select Quote. I'll just say the company name, because they can get insurance for everyone. And 2 weeks later, they sent out the exact same lab, a different person, but the same lab to run all the same tests for themselves. And that was such a blessing because that gave us 2 weeks apart of lab work that include PSA's testing. I didn't know what the PSA score was. I had no clue what it was. And when my agent called me, I was in my hotel room in Atlanta leading up to the Sweet 16 game. It was before the games had been played down there in Atlanta in 18. And he said, Mr. Fitzgerald, I'm just calling to let you know and that we're denying you for coverage. And I said, appreciate it, John. Was it, my weight again? He goes, no, sir, your PSA score is too high, and I'd advise you to get to a doctor as soon as possible. I thanked
Wow.
him, hung up, and Googled PSA score.
Right.
Prostate specific antigen score. It's the easiest, the best indicator of early detection of prostate health issues, including prostate cancer. And while mine wasn't really high, that 2 week window showed an escalation of a full point, which is an extreme rise. And we in that sense, we caught it early by the blessing of, I think, someone above telling me to go get some insurance.
Right.
And got to the doctor. They ran all their tests. They did all the fun biopsy stuff. Um, I was violated in every way possible. And I joked to my urologist, you spend your entire life going in the outdoor. Does that bother you? Um, and they quickly diagnosed that I did have prostate cancer. And my dogs are being
They're
a
all
security
right.
guard detail. And they decided that we needed to move pretty quickly. So, I mean, we're talking, this was March, I'm in the NCAA tournament coverage mode. And on July 3rd, I'm on the table having my prostate removed, which is very quickly. My doctor said as soon as he got into the field, it was robotic surgery. And so they pinned me down pretty good. And, my balls are up in the air so he can be in the field. And he said as soon as I got in there with the scope, I realized we got big issues. That my prostate was completely engulfed. Um, and most prostate cancer, you catch it early. It's like an egg, and
Right.
it's in the egg, and you pull the egg out and you throw it away, and the cancer's gone. Stage 3 is when it breaks out of the shell of the egg, and it hasn't gone anywhere. But I've had some good buddies that caught it right then before it could spread and got it out of their body. Unfortunately, mine in such a short period had broken out and crawled up into my bladder, um, making me stage 4 by prostate cancer standards because of when it spreads, it's much more difficult. Um, Intense radiation that fall. So by the December of 2018, in that short window, I've already done all my treatments. I've already, um, done everything they could with that. I'm on, to testosterone suppressants, which is part of um, cancer treatments for prostate cancer, and it, by all accounts, it worked. The radiation was some good shooting. Most of my problems now are related to the radiation more than the cancer. So I had some ongoing bladder and colon, lower back issues. All that area was kind of carpet bombed by the radiation. But after 3 years, I was declared in remission, which would have been of December of 21. And, I get through all of 22 and I'm testing my PSA throughout this whole process every 3 or 4 months. And my January 23 PSA test showed up, and it actually scored something. And why that's important is if you don't have a prostate, you shouldn't have any prostate cells to trip a PSA. So if you are tripping your PSA after your prostate's been removed, you have cancerous prostate cells that have moved through your body. So I was out of remission. They scheduled a CAT scan for me, very non-intrusive scan. You drink a radioactive isotope, weird to
Mhm.
say, and it lights up the cancer in your body. And unfortunately, when they called me back a couple weeks ago, the cancer has moved into my lymphatic system, now making me stage 4 metastatic. And again, my doctor was a little surprised by the spread and the aggressiveness of my cancer. So we're in the process right now of I'm going to go see a new oncologist for the simple fact that my original oncologist moved and he was specific in my cancer and his partner's more general cancer. So I'm getting back to a prostate cancer specific oncologist because it's a unique cancer, like breast cancer. It doesn't act like other cancers that feed off sugars. It feeds off, in this case, testosterone. So we'll see where this takes me. I might be doing chemo here during the remainder of basketball season, there's some other new treatments that weren't around when I was diagnosed, and I'm looking forward to seeing her. And actually, I'll go in to Kansas City to KU Med tomorrow. And let me tell you, folks, it doesn't matter if you're K-State or when you've got a health issue like my eyes, I treated with KUI. That Jayhawks never looked more beautiful. So it's I'm looking forward to getting started with the treatment. Let's get after this thing. I'm a fighter, and I'm not going to put
Right.
up with this nonsense.
I 100% understand, man. I am in your corner. I know you're gonna battle this thing like you did before, man. So, and I know a lot of K State, just people in general, are in your corner. So, just want you to know that, man. We're
Yeah,
all behind you.
it's
We're all rooting for you, and I know you're
incredible.
gonna battle like hell. So,
It's incredible. The support I receive from K State fans, let alone friends, family, fraternity brothers. I got a guy, one good buddy of mine that came up last night, staying with me tonight or today, and it's absolutely remarkable. And to see the basketball coaches and players holding up signs at halftime of last Saturday's game with Florida, the coaches versus cancer game with my name on it. It's just Brian, it's unbelievable. I have the
absolutely,
greatest
man.
support system anyone could ever need or want.
Well, I'm part of it. I know I've texted you a couple times.
Yeah,
I try not to overwhelm you with it, but you know
right.
what? At the same time, I'm gonna tell you every time that I feel like you need to hear something, I'm gonna text you just whatever. Just whatever.
Real quick, a couple things I've learned from this. First of all, I've become a spokesman for PSA testing. Particularly um, anyone 45 and over. Doctors might say 50 or 55. If I'd waited to 55 to do a PSA test, I'd be dead.
Right.
I and we've got a mutual friend. I assume knew Matt Miller,
Yep.
even though he played after you. And Bucky died before he was even 50 of prostate
Right.
cancer. And I don't spend much time wondering why did I get prostate cancer. I spend my time kind of focused on what can I do to maybe save the next guy. Maybe that's why I have it. There's someone out there that isn't supposed to die that needs to be alive. So that's kind of the approach I've taken to all of this, and it's been a good way to approach it. Just be very
Absolutely.
open. I'm incredibly open about this. I make people uncomfortable on purpose.
Right.
Talking about incontinence and erectile dysfunction.
Right.
It's not something guys want to talk about,
No.
but that's exactly why I talk about it. Is to make them realize, just go get your PSA test. It's a blood test. And you don't
Yeah.
want to be what I am right now. What I'm going through. You don't want that.
Right.
So that's kind of been my mission.
I appreciate it. My wife has been on me about it. I have an appointment next week for all of it.
Good.
It's just one of those things, man. We just got to do. I appreciate
Yeah.
you, and I know a lot of people again appreciate you just being open and just having the awareness, man.
Well,
And
and
to being a
let me
friend.
add one more thing, Brian. One of the big problems of prostate cancer is it is impacting African Americans at almost 3 times the rate.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
really bad, and I've talked to you about this in the past. We don't know if it's because of access to healthcare or social things or something actually genetic, physical going on, but it's real,
Yeah.
and it is a killer of black men at a higher rate, and that's
Yep.
bullshit. I don't, I'm not. We
Nope.
that if it is access or things that we can control, let's control it. Let's get that solved.
Yeah, I mean, I could go into it, but my parents were teachers, so
Hmm.
I mean, teachers, while they don't get paid a damn thing, they do have great health care. So, and my mom is a proponent of you got insurance, use it. And I fought that for years. And then once my brother died, I'm like, you know what? She's right. So
Hmm.
it's just one of those things you got to do. So I wholeheartedly, again, thank you for being open and being an advocate and trying to help everybody. So I appreciate that. Bringing it back to K State a little bit, and we'll wrap it up with this. Look, the what we've done as far as hiring these new coaches, man. The breath of fresh air, and I don't want to say in the past it wasn't. So that's not my point with this.
Yeah.
My point is that we've just got this breath of fresh air with these new coaches that we have hired in basketball and football. Tell me what your thoughts are as far as moving forward, because the one thing that I'm afraid of is somebody's going to try and come in with a huge check and try to get them away from us.
I
Um,
know.
I don't know that they're those type of men though that would do that. I just don't think that's the case. I think they love it where we're at. But kind of give me your thoughts on where we are with these two guys, man. Because to me, it's super exciting.
Let me point out that I am that type of man. If someone would like to offer me $9 million to cover their team, I'm your man. I'm that guy. I'll do it. KU. Okay, $9 million. I got it. Look, they're both special guys, Chris Kleiman and Jerome Tang.
Yeah,
They're perfect fits for Kansas State. I applaud Gene Taylor, the athletics director, for going out and hiring on quality of character as much as coaching. We see so many successful coaches out there that are low character people and they keep getting jobs because they win. And he went out and found good people. Chris Kleiman is perfect for Kansas State. You know, a lot of people said it couldn't be done other than Bill Snyder. There was some pretty good evidence to that. Coach Kleiman's come in and done it in very similar ways and yet in different ways. He's kind of approached it differently, but the core philosophies of the program under Bill Snyder that proved to work
yeah,
um, and made it possible at a place with such a small recruiting base. There's just not many high school football players in the state, and there's two Division I Power Five football programs.
right,
Um, as you know, there's a great junior college system that he used. Now, Coach Kleiman is using junior college and also the transfer portal. You've got to develop the guys. You're not going to get the 5-star guys. You got to
correct.
get the guys that maybe others have missed on, and he's done a great job with that and done it in a high character way. Been more of a player coach maybe than Bill Snyder. And guys enjoy playing for him, but he's also a disciplinarian. And then in roars Jerome Tang from Baylor. I didn't know much about Coach Tang. He was on my short list from day one for this job, just because the success as a coach he had at Baylor and building that thing from an absolute, you
Whew.
know, wasteland after just some horrific events in Waco. And now that I've gotten to know him, I've never been around a coach like him. I've
Yeah,
never seen anyone that lives with such joy and goodness and yet demands excellence. It doesn't
right.
mean he's soft. He coaches everyone around him, including media, including students, not just his team and players. And he has really energized Kansas State and as a whole. And I agree with you. And while I recognize that Gene Taylor's got a tough job and making sure they're adequately paid to not leave, I think both men are very motivated by the culture of Kansas State, and it's where they want to
Right,
be. I don't see either one of them really wanting to be at a high profile, high pressure institution. Like
right.
a lot of people talk about Jerome Tang to Texas. I just don't see that as a fit for coach. Um, and if Michigan or Ohio State came after Chris Kleiman, I don't see that either. I do
Nope.
see Iowa because it's similar to K State as a threat. That is kind of his school, even though he went to Northern Iowa. That's his school he grew up with. So there are some threats out there, but I think as long as Gene Taylor's the boss and K State fans are making sure that these they have the money to compensate these guys, I think they're going to be here for a while, and it's fun. It's fun to cover sports right now. It's a blast.
Man, I'm telling you, it is absolutely amazing. I just, to be able to stick your chest out as a former K State football player, to be able to stick it out while the basketball team is doing so well, it's just, it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine being a student at Kansas State right now. Oh my god, the amount of fun that those guys are having right now, being able to go, with basketball and football, just to be a student there right now has to be just amazing.
It's
Just
incredible.
amazing.
Incredible.
So, well, I appreciate it, Fitz, man. Thank you again. Look, I've said a lot of things to you before. I mean, you're kind of my not kind of. You are my mentor in this business, man. I'm just trying to do something that I like doing. That's fun. And all you've told me is just to keep moving forward, and I appreciate all of that, man. So I'm just gonna keep doing this thing as long as I can. I thank you. I can't thank you enough for just the words of wisdom that you've given me, just the access and the time. Um, it really, really, really means a lot. And I'm not just telling this to you. I want everybody that listens to this or sees this to understand the things that you've done for me, man. So I just want to
Well,
thank you again for that.
you kind of epitomize how I like to run my business. I'm a big gut instinct guy. I know that every really bad decision I've ever made, that voice was in my head.
Yep.
Don't do this, man. Don't. This isn't the right way to go about this. I'm a big believer. If you've never read Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink, I would advise everyone to do it. It's about trusting that voice, because he shows some great evidence that it's real. But I remember hearing your podcast, and how you went about handling a podcast by yourself, talking about a variety of topics. I immediately reached out. I needed a football analyst. I didn't know where you were at the time, not knowing you were in Texas, but I immediately reached out and said, "Hey, you want to help us out with some football analysis?" And I just kind of knew from the get go you were going to be one of my guys, and you're one of my guys, and I appreciate it very much. I love you, brother, and I'm glad you're part of our team. And
Absolutely.
anything I can do to help you, I will.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody for tuning into this episode. Thank you.